I walked through the front door of my parents' house carrying a bottle of expensive wine and 3 shopping bags full of gifts, my feet aching from a 12-hour shift at the marketing firm. The smell of roasted turkey filled the air, and laughter echoed from the dining room. My sister Diana stood near the table, perfectly styled in her cream sweater, and looked me up and down with that familiar smirk. "Where's your husband and kids, Barry?" "Oh, right. You don't have any." The room erupted in laughter. My parents doubled over, wiping tears from their eyes. My heart pounded against my ribs as rage flooded through me. Tonight would be different. The colonial-style house stood proud on Maple Street in suburban Connecticut, its white paint gleaming under the porch lights. I parked my car in the driveway, next to Diana's minivan with the stick-figure family decals on the back window. A husband, a wife, 2 kids, and even a dog they didn't own. The perfect family image. I grabbed the wine and bags from my passenger seat and took a deep breath before heading inside. Mom had decorated for Thanksgiving with her usual enthusiasm. Orange and burgundy garland wrapped around the staircase banister, and a cornucopia sat on the entry table surrounded by miniature pumpkins. Everything looked warm and inviting, like something from a magazine. I knew better. This house, this beautiful home my parents loved to show off to their friends, existed because of me. Without the $48,000 I'd given them 5 years ago when the bank threatened foreclosure, they'd be living in a cramped apartment somewhere across town. Diana appeared in the hallway, her blonde hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, pearl earrings catching the light. Shed married Brandon 8 years ago, and they had 2 children, Sophie, who was 5, and Mason, who just turned 3. Diana stayed home with the kids while Brandon worked in sales, or at least he used to. She rushed forward and hugged me, her perfume overwhelming and expensive. I recognized the scent. It cost $150 a bottle. I knew because I'd priced it once and decided it was too extravagant. "Thank goodness you're here," she said brightly. "Mom's been worried you'd have to work through dinner again. You know how she is about family time." She took the wine from my hands without asking and examined the label. "Wow, fancy. Must be nice to splurge when you only have yourself to worry about." I bit my tongue and followed her into the dining room where everyone had already gathered. Mom stood near the china cabinet, wearing the necklace Id bought her last Christmas. Dad sat at the head of the table in his favorite chair, the sports section spread in front of him. Aunt Patricia and Uncle Gary occupied the love seat by the window, and my cousin Justin scrolled through his phone on the couch. "Barry's here," Diana announced unnecessarily. Everyone looked up and offered polite greetings, but their attention quickly returned to the children playing on the floor with wooden blocks. Sophie wore a velvet dress with a satin bow, and Mason had on tiny dress shoes that probably cost more than my grocery budget for a month. Mom rushed over and kissed my cheek. "You look exhausted, honey. Still working those crazy hours? When are you going to slow down and enjoy life a little?" She patted my arm and moved away before I could respond, returning to the kitchen to check on the side dishes. I set the gift bags on the side table and removed my coat. Dad glanced up from his newspaper. "Good to see you, kiddo. How's the job treating you? Still climbing that corporate ladder?" "It's going well," I said simply. "We just landed a major client, so things have been busy." "That's wonderful," Aunt Patricia chimed in, though her tone suggested she found it anything but wonderful. "Justin's been thinking about graduate school. Such an exciting time for young people building their careers." She looked at me pointedly, as if I should offer to pay for his tuition. The dining room table was set with Mom's best china, the plates Id bought her 3 years ago when she complained about her old mismatched set. Crystal glasses sparkled under the chandelier, another gift from me after their old light fixture broke. I counted at least 6 items in this room alone that existed because of my money. But no one seemed to remember that part. Diana brought out a platter of appetizers and set it in the center of the coffee table. Shed made her famous stuffed mushrooms and bacon-wrapped dates. Everyone praised her cooking skills, her presentation, her domestic talents. I watched her glow under the attention, soaking it up like sunshine. "Dinner's almost ready," Mom announced. "Everyone find your seats." Shed arranged place cards, and I found mine at the far end of the table, squeezed between Uncle Gary and the wall. Diana sat in the place of honor beside Dad, with her perfect family arranged around her like a portrait. As we settled in, Brandon arrived from the kitchen, carrying a bowl of mashed potatoes. He wore a polo shirt and khakis, his hair gelled carefully into place. He nodded at me briefly but didn't make conversation. We'd never been close. Head always seemed uncomfortable around me. as if my success somehow diminished his own. The meal began with Dad's traditional Thanksgiving prayer, thanking God for family and blessings and abundance. I kept my eyes open and watched everyone's bowed heads, wondering if any of them felt grateful for the abundance my paychecks had provided. As plates were filled and passed, the conversation flowed around me like I was a rock in a stream. Diana talked about Sophie's dance recital and Mason's playgroup. Mom shared neighborhood gossip about the Hendersons' divorce and the Martins' new pool. Dad complained about rising property taxes, shooting me a meaningful look that I pretended not to notice. "Still married to your job, Barry?" Uncle Gary asked between bites of turkey. "When are you going to settle down and give your parents some more grandchildren?" "They'd love that, I'm sure." He chuckled like Head made a clever joke. "I'm happy with my life," I replied evenly, reaching for my wine glass. "Of course you are," Diana said sweetly. "You have everything you need: career, money, independence. Who needs messy things like relationships and family responsibilities?" She smiled at her children as she cut Mason's turkey into small pieces. The comment stung, but I stayed quiet. I'd learned years ago that defending myself only invited more attacks. Better to let them have their fun and get through the evening. Sophie suddenly announced she needed to use the bathroom, and Diana excused herself to take her daughter upstairs. I watched them go, noticing again Diana's designer purse hanging on the back of her chair. The leather looked expensive, probably $800 or more. I knew for a fact that Brandon had been laid off 3 months ago because Mom had mentioned it in passing during one of our phone calls, asking if I knew anyone hiring in sales. Yet here was Diana, carrying a purse that cost more than most people's monthly car payment. Something wasn't adding up, but I pushed the thought away and focused on my plate. The turkey was dry, as usual. Mom always cooked it too long, but no one ever told her. I excused myself to use the powder room off the hallway, needing a moment away from the table and the constant subtle jabs. As I washed my hands and checked my reflection in the mirror, I heard Diana's voice coming from upstairs. She was on her phone, her voice hushed but urgent. I stepped into the hallway and listened, knowing I shouldn't but unable to stop myself. "I understand, Mom, but I need more time," Diana was saying. "I can make a payment next week, I promise. The card is just temporarily maxed out. Please don't close the account." There was a pause as whoever was on the other end responded. "I know I said that last month," Diana continued, her voice tight with stress. "Things have been difficult. My husband lost his job and we're still catching up. I just need a little flexibility here." Another pause. "Fine. Yes, I understand. I'll figure something out." Diana ended the call and I heard her footsteps moving toward the stairs. I quickly slipped into the bathroom and closed the door, waiting a moment before flushing the toilet and running the water. When I emerged, Diana was heading back down the stairs, her composure restored, her smile back in place. She didn't see me in the shadowy hallway. I returned to my seat with a knot forming in my stomach. Diana was in serious financial trouble. The perfect life she projected on social media, the expensive clothes and accessories, the immaculate home she was always posting about, it was all a facade, and I had a sinking feeling I knew who she expected to solve her problems. Back at the table, dessert was being served. I'd brought a cherry pie from an artisan bakery downtown, the kind with a lattice crust and organic ingredients. It cost $42, which felt ridiculous even as I paid for it, but I'd wanted to bring something nice. Diana cut into it and served slices to everyone, making a show of admiring the presentation. "Must be nice to have money for fancy desserts when you have nobody to spend it on," she said with a light laugh. "I mean, what else are you going to do with all that disposable income, right?" Several people chuckled. Uncle Gary patted his stomach and said something about how he wished he had Barry's food budget. Aunt Patricia mentioned that homemade desserts were more meaningful anyway, more love baked into them. I forced myself to take a bite of pie and say nothing. The cherries tasted like ash in my mouth. Mom suddenly stood up, clapping her hands together. "I almost forgot. We need to take family photos. I want to get some good shots for our Christmas cards this year." She pulled out her phone and started directing people like a photographer at a wedding shoot. "Diana, you and Brandon stand in the middle with the kids," she instructed. "Dad, you stand behind them with your hand on Brandon's shoulder. Patricia and Gary, you two come in on the left side." I stood awkwardly to the side, waiting to be told where to position myself. Mom snapped several photos of the arrangement, checking each one carefully and making small adjustments. She had Dad move closer, Had Sophie hold Mason's hand. Had Brandon smile bigger. Okay, now let's get one with Barry too, she finally said, as if remembering I existed. Barry, just squeeze in on the end there. I moved to the edge of the group, practically pressed against the wall. Mom snapped 2 quick photos and immediately checked her screen. Perfect, she declared. These will be beautiful for the cards. Can I see? I asked, moving closer. Mom tilted the phone away slightly. Oh, I'll text them to you later. She started tapping at her screen, clearly already editing and filtering the images. I caught a glimpse of one photo where it'd been cropped out entirely. My shoulder, the only evidence it'd been there at all. The message was clear. These cards were meant to showcase the beautiful family, the successful daughter with her husband and children, the proud grandparents. I didn't fit that narrative. A 35-year-old single woman with no children wasn't the kind of family member you displayed on Christmas cards sent to friends and neighbors. We returned to the table and people started on their pie. Dad cleared his throat in that way he did when he was about to bring up something uncomfortable. Helen and I were talking the other day, he began, using Mom's first name like this was an official announcement. The roof is starting to leak in 2 places. We got an estimate, and it's going to run about $12,000 to replace it properly. He looked directly at me, his meaning unmistakable. I cut into my pie and said nothing. That's a lot of money, Aunt Patricia said sympathetically. Home repairs are always so expensive. It really is, Mom agreed. And with winter coming, we can't wait too long. We were thinking maybe by Christmas we could get it done. She also looked at me meaningfully. The implication hung in the air like smoke. They wanted me to pay for it. Of course they did. Just like Id paid for the mortgage, the car, the new appliances, the property tax increase, and countless other expenses over the years. Have you thought about a home equity loan? I suggested quietly. Dad frowned. We don't want to take on more debt at our age. We're trying to be financially responsible. The irony of that statement wasn't lost on me. Financially responsible, except when it came to asking their daughter for money. The conversation moved on, but the tension remained. Mom mentioned wanting to take Diana's family to Disney World next summer, a trip she'd been dreaming about. The kids would love it, and they deserve a special vacation after everything they've been through with Brandon's job situation. She looked at me again, hope in her eyes. I gripped my fork tighter and focused on my plate. Aunt Patricia turned to me with forced brightness. So, Barry, are you seeing anyone? Any prospects on the horizon? I went on a few dates this summer, I said carefully. Nothing serious. I've been focused on work. We just promoted 3 people in my department and things are very demanding right now. Diana let out a small laugh that sounded like breaking glass. That's code for nobody wants her. She said it lightly, like a joke, but her eyes were hard. My sister had perfected the art of the insult disguised as humor. Dad chuckled. Mom giggled behind her napkin. Uncle Gary grinned and shook his head. Even Aunt Patricia smiled, though she tried to hide it by taking a sip of wine. My hands started to shake. I set my fork down and pressed my palms flat against my thighs under the table, trying to steady myself. Brandon leaned back in his chair, emboldened by the laughter. Some women just aren't cut out for family life, he said with a shrug. Nothing wrong with that. The world needs career women too. Someone has to keep the economy running. He said career women like it was a diagnosis, a condition to be pitied. I felt heat rising up my neck and into my cheeks. My chest felt tight, like someone was squeezing my lungs. It endured years of these comments, these little cuts that were supposed to be teasing but drew blood nonetheless. Id stayed silent. Been the good daughter, the generous sister, the reliable source of money whenever anyone needed it. And this was my reward. Mockery, dismissal, public humiliation. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, grateful for the distraction, and saw an alert from my bank's fraud prevention system. Unusual activity detected on your credit card ending in 4729. Please verify recent charges. I frowned and opened the app. Someone had attempted to charge $573 at an online luxury retailer. I hadn't made that purchase. My card was still in my wallet, tucked safely in my purse. My purse, which I'd left hanging on the back of my chair, which had been in the dining room while I was upstairs using the bathroom, which had been easily accessible to anyone at the table. I looked up and caught Diana's eyes on me. She looked away quickly, too quickly, her face flushing slightly. My gaze dropped to her lap where her phone screen was visible. She had a web browser open, and I could just make out the logo of the same luxury retailer where the fraudulent charge had been attempted. Understanding crashed over me like cold water. Diana had gone through my purse. She'd taken a photo of my credit card, front and back. She'd tried to use it to buy things online. My own sister was trying to steal from me. I stared at my phone screen, my mind racing. The attempted charge was clear as day. $573 at a luxury fashion website. My card was declined, thank goodness, because I'd recently lowered my credit limit as part of my financial planning. But the intent was there. Someone had my card information and tried to use it. Diana stood abruptly and began collecting dessert plates, her movements jerky and nervous. "Anyone want coffee?" she asked brightly. "I can put on a pot." "That would be lovely," Mom said. "Very. You look pale. Are you feeling all right?" "I'm fine," I managed to say, though my voice sounded distant to my own ears. Diana disappeared into the kitchen, and I heard the clink of dishes being stacked in the sink. Brandon checked his watch and mentioned something about needing to get the kids home soon for bedtime. The evening was winding down, and I should have been relieved. Instead, I felt something building inside me like a storm gathering strength. Diana returned from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She sat back down and picked up her wine glass, avoiding my eyes. The conversation continued around us. Meaningless chatter about sports and weather and neighborhood news. Then Diana set down her glass and stood again, this time moving behind my chair as if to help clear more dishes. As she passed me, she leaned down slightly and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "So, Barry, where's your husband and kids?" "Oh, right. You don't have any." The room went silent. Everyone froze mid-motion. Uncle Gary's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Aunt Patricia's wine glass paused in the air. Mom and Dad both looked at Diana, then at me, then back at Diana. Then Dad chuckled. It started low in his chest and built into a full laugh. Mom covered her mouth, but her shoulders shook with suppressed giggles. Uncle Gary grinned and shook his head like Diana had said something clever. Aunt Patricia tried to look disapproving, but a smile tugged at her lips. Diana stood there with a triumphant smirk, and I felt something inside me crack. Not break, but crack. Like ice on a frozen lake when the temperature shifts. 10 years ago, I'd been engaged. His name was Thomas, and he was a high school teacher who coached basketball on the side. He was kind and funny and loved me for exactly who I was. My parents hated him. "Not good enough," they said. "No ambition. Teachers don't make real money. You can do better, Barry. You're too smart to settle." I broke off the engagement. I listened to them because I thought they wanted what was best for me. Thomas married someone else within a year. I heard through mutual friends that he was happy, that his wife was a nurse and they had 2 kids now and a house with a big backyard where he built a basketball hoop. He was living the life he'd given up. My parents never apologized. They never even mentioned it again. They just started asking when I'd meet someone new, as if Thomas had been easily replaceable. 5 years ago, Mom called me crying. The bank was foreclosing on their house. They'd taken out a second mortgage to pay off credit card debt and fallen behind on payments. Could I help? Just this once? They'd pay me back. I wrote a check for $48,000. They never paid me back. They never even tried. 3 years ago, their car died. I bought them a new one. $22,000. No discussion of repayment. For the past 5 years, I'd been sending them $1,500 a month for expenses. They called it help. I called it extortion, though never out loud. That was $90,000 total. I'd paid for Diana's wedding. $35,000 because she wanted the perfect day and Brandon's family couldn't contribute much. I'd been the maid of honor and paid for everything from the venue to the flowers to the photographer. For the past year, I'd been helping Diana with rent. $1,500 a month, separate from what I gave my parents. Another $18,000. I'd just done the math in my head. Over the past 10 years, I'd given my family over $250,000. $250,000. Gone. Handed over whenever they asked, whenever they hinted, whenever they looked at me with expectation in their eyes. And in return, I got mockery. I got comparison. I got treated like a wallet with legs, Diana continued, her voice dripping with false concern. At least I have a real life, not just a bank account. Money can't keep you warm at night. Barry. She turned to Mom. Don't you feel sad that Barry will never give you more grandchildren? Such a shame. My phone buzzed again. I looked down to see a call coming through from my bank's fraud department. I stood up from the table, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. Excuse me, I said. I need to take this. I answered the phone right there in the dining room, putting it on speaker so I could navigate the app at the same time. Hello, Miss Thompson? This is Derek from First National Bank Fraud Prevention. We've detected several suspicious attempts on your credit card ending in 4729. Can you verify your recent activity? What attempts? I asked, my voice steady despite my racing heart. There was a charge attempt for $573 at an online retailer called Luxe Fashion House. Then another attempt for $4,200 at the same retailer about 10 minutes later. Both were declined due to insufficient available credit. Did you make these purchases? $4,000. Diana had tried to charge $4,000 to my card. No, I said clearly. Those are fraudulent. I did not authorize those charges. Diana's face had gone completely white. She sat frozen in her chair, her hand gripping her wine glass so tight her knuckles looked like bone. I see, Derek said. I'm going to cancel this card immediately and issue you a new one. It should arrive in 5 to 7 business days. I recommend you check your other accounts for any suspicious activity. Thank you, I said. I'll do that. I ended the call and looked directly at Diana. The entire table was silent. Even the children had stopped playing and were staring at the adults with wide, confused eyes. That's strange, I said slowly. Someone tried to steal $4,000 from me. Tonight. Here, using my credit card information. Diana's mouth opened but no sound came out. Brandon looked between us, his expression shifting from confusion to suspicion. Who would do something like that? Mom asked, her hand fluttering to her throat. I kept my eyes on Diana. She stared back at me, and I watched the calculation happening behind her eyes. She was trying to decide whether to deny it or deflect. Her phone sat face up on the table, and the screen had dimmed but not locked. The shopping cart at Luxe Fashion House was still visible. Items totaling exactly $4,200. Brandon saw it too. He leaned forward and looked at Diana's phone screen. Then at Diana. Then at me. Diana. What is this? Diana grabbed her phone and locked the screen. But it was too late. Nothing, she said quickly. Just browsing. I don't understand, Aunt Patricia said. What's happening? I stood there, feeling the weight of 10 years pressing down on me. 10 years of silence, 10 years of taking the high road, 10 years of being the family ATM. The words came out calm and cold. You're right, Diana. Let me tell you about my money. Everyone at the table turned to look at me. I stayed standing, my hands resting on the back of my chair. My voice didn't shake. Years of presenting to corporate executives had taught me how to project confidence even when everything inside me was screaming. Let me give everyone a complete picture, I said. 5 years ago, Mom and Dad called me because the bank was foreclosing on this house. I gave them $48,000 to save it. I never asked for repayment. This beautiful home you all love to visit exists because of me. Mom's face went pale. Roger, she whispered. But Dad didn't look at her. He stared at his plate. 3 years ago, their car broke down beyond repair. I bought them a new one, $22,000. Again, no repayment plan, no discussion. Just my money making their problem disappear. That's private, Dad finally said, his voice gruff. That's family business. Private? I repeated. You just laughed at me in front of the entire family. You've spent 10 years making me feel small, making me feel less than, because I don't have a husband and children. But let's talk about what I do have. Let's talk about what I've given you. I turn to address the whole table now. For 5 years, I've sent my parents $1,500 every month. That's $90,000 total. They call it help with expenses. I call it funding their lifestyle. Aunt Patricia's eyes widened. Uncle Gary set down his fork and leaned back in his chair. I paid for Diana's wedding, I continued. $35,000 because she wanted everything perfect and Brandon's family couldn't afford to contribute. The flowers, the venue, the photographer, the band, the cake. All of it, my gift to my sister on her special day. Brandon's head snapped toward Diana. What? he said. And for the past year, I've been sending Diana $1,500 every month to help with rent. That's $18,000. I looked at Brandon directly. Did you know about that? Brandon stood up slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. His face had gone red. Diana, what is she talking about? Diana's eyes filled with tears. Brandon, I can explain. The math is simple, I said. Over the past 10 years, I've given this family over $250,000, $250,000. And what have I gotten in return? I paused, letting the question hang in the air. Mockery. Comparison. Tonight, my own sister tried to steal from me. That's not true, Diana burst out. I didn't steal anything. I held up my phone, showing the fraud alert. $4,200. Attempted on my credit card. While I was in this house, after you had access to my purse when I went upstairs, Brandon grabbed Diana's phone from the table before she could stop him. He unlocked it with ease, clearly knew her password, and his face darkened as he scrolled through what he found. Diana, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. You have a shopping cart here. $4,000 worth of clothes and jewelry. The exact amount. I was just looking, Diana said desperately. I wasn't going to actually buy anything. Then why did my card get charged? I asked. Twice. $500 first, then $4,000 when that didn't work. Diana started crying in earnest now, mascara running down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm sorry, I just needed it. We have nothing, Barry. You have everything and we have nothing. We have nothing? Brandon repeated incredulously. We have nothing because you've been lying to me. He turned to me. I didn't know about any rent money. I thought we were managing fine. I've been working 2 part-time jobs to make ends meet because Diana told me we were barely scraping by. The room erupted. Mom tried to defend Diana, saying something about how hard it is to be a mother, how stressful it is to manage a household. Dad told everyone to calm down, that we could discuss this rationally. Aunt Patricia looked scandalized. Uncle Gary actually looked impressed, though whether with me for finally speaking up or with the sheer drama of it all, I couldn't tell. I kept talking, my voice rising above the chaos. You want to talk about what I don't have, Diana? Fine. Where's your money? Oh, right. I've been supporting you. Where's your financial stability? Oh, right. You've been surviving on my paychecks. Where's your honesty? Oh, right. You've been lying to your husband and stealing from your sister. The table went completely silent. Even the children stopped moving. Until today. I finished. This ends today. Helen gasped. What do you mean? I mean the money stops. All of it. No more rent help for Diana. No more monthly checks for you and Dad. No more bailing you out every time something breaks or some expense comes up. I'm done. You can't be serious, Mom said, her voice shaking. We're family. Family, I repeated bitterly. You've spent 10 years treating me like an ATM. You've compared me to Diana at every opportunity. You've made me feel worthless because I chose my career over marriage. You've taken my money while mocking my life choices. That's not family. That's exploitation. Dad finally looked up, and I saw something that might have been shame flicker across his face before his expression hardened. We raised you. We gave you everything. You gave me a childhood, I said. I gave you $250,000. We're even. Brandon was still scrolling through Diana's phone, his face getting darker with each swipe. How much debt are you in? He asked Diana quietly. She didn't answer, just kept crying into her hands. How much? He asked again, louder this time. $60,000, she whispered. In credit cards you don't know about? The number hung in the air like a bomb. $60,000. Brandon set the phone down very carefully on the table. He looked at his children, then at Diana, then at me. I'm so sorry, he said to me. I had no idea. I never would have let this happen if I'd known. Sophie started crying, sensing the tension even if she didn't understand it. Mason reached for his mother, but Diana was too lost in her own breakdown to comfort him. I need to go, I said, grabbing my purse and coat. I can't be here anymore. If you leave now, Mom said, standing up quickly, don't bother coming back. I looked at her. Really looked at her. She was scared. I could see it in her eyes. She'd just realized that her safety net was walking out the door. The daughter who paid for everything was done. That's the first thing you've said tonight that I agree with, I told her. I walked to the front door, my heart pounding so hard I felt dizzy. Behind me, I heard Brandon asking Diana more questions, his voice rising. I heard Sophie and Mason both crying now. I heard Mom trying to call me back, her tone shifting from angry to pleading. I opened the door and stepped out into the cold November night. The air hit my face like a splash of water, clearing my head. I walked to my car, got in, and sat there for a moment with my hands on the steering wheel. My phone started ringing. Mom. I declined the call. It rang again immediately. Diana. I declined that too. Then a text from Dad. We need to talk about this rationally. I blocked all their numbers. Every single one. Mom, Dad, Diana. Even Brandon. Though I felt bad about that one. Then I started my car and drove away from that house, away from that family, away from 10 years of pain and resentment and feeling like I was never good enough. I drove and I didn't look back. The first week after Thanksgiving was the hardest. My phone stayed silent, which I'd expected after blocking my family's numbers, but the silence felt heavy and wrong. I'd spent 10 years talking to my parents multiple times a week, checking in on Diana, being the reliable one everyone could count on. Now there was nothing. I threw myself into work. The major client we'd just signed needed a full marketing campaign developed by the new year, and I volunteered to lead the team. My colleagues seemed surprised by my sudden intensity, but they didn't question it. I stayed at the office until 9 or 10 at night, went home to my small apartment, and collapsed into bed without thinking. On day 8, a letter arrived, my mother's handwriting on the envelope, my name written in her careful cursive. I almost threw it away unopened. But curiosity won. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and read it. The letter was 3 pages long. The first page was anger. How could I embarrass the family like that? How could I air private matters in front of extended relatives? Didn't I know how humiliated they felt? The second page was guilt. After everything they'd done for me, raising me, supporting my education, being there for me, this was how I repaid them? The third page was bargaining. If I just came back, we could talk about this. We could work out a payment plan. We were family, and family forgives. Not once did she apologize. Not once did she acknowledge the years of taking my money while treating me like I was less than. Not once did she seem to understand why I'd left. I put the letter in my desk drawer and didn't respond. More letters came over the next few weeks. Dad's was shorter, more direct. He listed the expenses they were facing. The roof, the property taxes, the heating bill for winter. He ended with a single question. Are you really going to let your parents suffer? Yes, I wrote in my journal that night. Yes, I am. Diana tried a different approach. She sent messages through mutual friends, asking them to tell me she was sorry, that she was in therapy, that she wanted to make things right. One friend, a woman named Caroline who had known since college, called me directly. Barry, Diana called me, Caroline said. She sounds really desperate. She says Brandon left her. I sat on my couch with the phone pressed to my ear, feeling nothing. Did she say why he left? She told me about the debt. Caroline's voice was gentle. I had no idea things were that bad for them. But Barry, she's your sister. Maybe you could just talk to her? She tried to steal from me, I said flatly. She went through my purse, photographed my credit card, and tried to buy $4,000 worth of things. That's not just financial trouble. That's criminal. Caroline was quiet for a moment. I didn't know that part. She sighed. What are you going to do? Nothing, I said. I'm going to do absolutely nothing. And that's the point. I started seeing a therapist. Her name was Dr. Martinez, and her office was in a brick building downtown with plants in every window. I told her everything, the whole messy story, and waited for her to tell me I was being too harsh, that family was important, that I should try to reconcile. Instead, she said, "What you're describing is financial abuse." I blinked at her. What? Financial abuse, she repeated. Your family has been exploiting your financial resources while undermining your self-worth. They've created a dynamic where you provide money to maintain their approval. But that approval is always conditional and never quite enough. That's abuse. The word hit me like cold water. Abuse. I'd never thought of it that way. Abuse was violence, wasn't it? Abuse was obvious and dramatic. This was just family dysfunction, wasn't it? Dr. Martinez walked me through the patterns, the constant comparisons to Diana, the mockery of my life choices, the expectation that I'd provide money without question or appreciation, the way they made me feel guilty for having success, the way they punished me for setting boundaries. You're doing the right thing, she told me. Cutting contact is often the healthiest choice when someone is being abused. I cried in her office that day. Not sad tears, but angry ones. Furious that I'd let it go on so long. Furious that I'd thought it was normal. Furious that I'd paid for the privilege of being treated poorly. By December, I'd started to feel different. Lighter. I moved to a new apartment. A beautiful place with hardwood floors and big windows that let in morning light. For years, I'd been living in a cramped one-bedroom, telling myself I didn't need more space, didn't need luxury. Now I realized I'd been punishing myself, living small so I could make myself smaller, so I wouldn't outshine Diana, so my success wouldn't be too obvious. The new apartment had 2 bedrooms. One became my office. I bought a real desk, a comfortable chair, art for the walls. I bought myself things I'd always denied myself. Good cookware, soft towels, a reading chair by the window. I started going to a gym. I'd always been too busy, too tired. But now I had energy I didn't know had been missing. Turned out that being constantly drained by family drama takes a physical toll. In January, I got a promotion. Senior Director of Marketing. The raise was substantial, $40,000 more per year. I sat in the HR office as they explained the new benefits package, and I thought about how that $40,000 would have gone straight to my family before. Now it was mine. All mine. I bought myself a new wardrobe for work. Professional, polished pieces that made me feel confident. I'd been wearing the same rotation of outfits for years. Nothing too nice. Nothing that would make Diana feel bad when she saw photos. In February, Caroline invited me to a dinner party. I almost said no, still feeling raw and unsure in social situations, but something made me accept. The party was at her house, a beautiful Victorian she shared with her husband. 10 people around a long table, good food, better wine, conversation that ranged from silly to serious. That's where I met Jack. He taught high school English and coached the debate team. He had kind eyes and a quick laugh, and he talked about his students with genuine affection. We ended up in the kitchen together, both refilling wine glasses, and talked for an hour about books we loved. He asked for my number. I gave it to him. We went on a date the following week, dinner at a small Italian restaurant where the pasta was homemade and the owner knew everyone by name. Jack told me about his day, funny stories about teenagers and their dramatic interpretations of Shakespeare. He asked about my work and actually listened to the answer, asked follow-up questions, seemed genuinely interested. At the end of the night, he walked me to my car and said he'd love to see me again. No pressure, no expectations, just a sincere statement of interest. I smiled and said yes. In March, Brandon reached out through LinkedIn. His message was professional and respectful. Would you be willing to meet for coffee? I'd like to apologize properly and give you an update on some things. No pressure if you'd rather not. I debated for 2 days before responding. Finally, I agreed. We met at a neutral cafe downtown, the kind with exposed brick and local art on the walls. He arrived 5 minutes early, looking thinner than I remembered, tired around the eyes. Thank you for meeting me, he said as we sat down with our coffees. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure I would either, I admitted. But I appreciate you asking instead of just showing up. He nodded. I learned that lesson. Respect boundaries. My therapist has been big on that. You're in therapy? Court ordered. He wrapped his hands around his mug. I'm in the middle of divorce proceedings. It's been complicated. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. Whatever Diana had done, I knew divorce was painful. Don't be. It's the right thing. Brandon took a sip of his coffee and seemed to gather his thoughts. I need to apologize to you. For that night at Thanksgiving. For the things I said. For not seeing what was really happening. I was parroting Diana's insecurities and I had no right. Thank you, I said quietly. I also need to tell you some things. Brandon pulled out his phone and opened a notes app. After you left, everything fell apart. Diana had a complete breakdown. My parents came and took the kids for the night. I went through our finances completely. He scrolled through the notes. She had 7 credit cards I didn't know about. Total debt of $63,000. He rubbed his face with both hands. She handled all the finances. She said she had it under control. I was working constantly, trying to provide, and I didn't question it. That's on me. We sat in silence for a moment. I filed for divorce in December, Brandon continued. I have primary custody of the kids. Diana gets supervised visitation twice a week. She's living with your aunt now. Patricia took her in. How is she? Working retail, learning what actual struggle looks like. Brandon's voice was hard. She also lost your parents' support. What do you mean? Your mom and dad can't help her. They don't have the money. Without your monthly checks, they're barely managing. The roof still leaks. The car needs repairs. They're facing reality for the first time in years. I should have felt satisfaction. Instead, I felt hollow. What about you? I'm okay. Working full-time now in insurance. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills. The kids are in therapy too, dealing with the separation. Sophie asks about you sometimes. My chest tightened. What does she say? She misses Aunt Barry. Brandon's voice softened. She remembers that you always brought her books. She loved that you took the time to ask what she was interested in, not just buying random toys. Tears pricked my eyes. I miss her too. And Mason, maybe when things settle, if you want, you could see them. No pressure, no obligations. Just an aunt who loves them. Brandon met my eyes. They're innocent in all this. They didn't ask for any of it. I'd like that, I said. We talked for another hour. He told me about the divorce proceedings, the asset division, the custody arrangement. He apologized again for his behavior, for not protecting me from Diana's manipulation. He thanked me for exposing the truth before they got even deeper into debt. When we parted ways, he hugged me briefly. You did the right thing, he said. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you saved us. If you hadn't walked away, we'd be in foreclosure right now with a house we couldn't afford and even more debt. I drove home thinking about that. I'd saved them by leaving, by finally saying no, by stopping the cycle. In April, a handwritten letter arrived. Diana's handwriting this time, but different. Less confident, more careful. I opened it at my kitchen table with a cup of tea. The letter was 2 pages. It started with an apology. A real one. Not I'm sorry you're upset, but I'm sorry for what I did. She listed her actions, took responsibility, didn't make excuses. She acknowledged the theft, the lies, the years of mockery. I'm in therapy, she wrote, twice a week, working on why I did what I did. Why I needed to tear you down to feel better about myself. Why I thought your success diminished my worth. She explained that she'd been miserable for years, that her marriage had been struggling since Mason was born, that Brandon was controlling in ways she couldn't articulate, that she'd felt trapped in a life she'd chosen but didn't want, that seeing me free and successful made her rage and envy eat her alive. I wanted you to be miserable too, she wrote. If you were alone and unhappy, at least I'd have my family. At least I'd have something you didn't. But you weren't miserable. You were thriving. And I hated you for it. The letter continued with updates. She was working at a department store, saving money, trying to rebuild. She was living with Aunt Patricia and paying rent. She was seeing her kids twice a week and slowly earning back Brandon's trust regarding co-parenting. She was facing the consequences of her actions. She ended with this. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. What I took from you wasn't money. It was dignity. It was peace. It was the love you should have felt from your family. I can't give that back, but I can promise I'm working every day to become someone who would never take it in the first place. I folded the letter and put it in the drawer with the others. I didn't respond. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I kept it. By summer, my life looked completely different. I woke up in my beautiful apartment with Jack beside me, morning light streaming through the windows. We'd been dating for 6 months, taking it slow, building something real. Had met my friends. I'd met his family. There was no pressure for marriage or children, just 2 adults enjoying each other's company and seeing where it led. We made coffee together in my kitchen, discussing weekend plans. Jack wanted to visit a farmer's market. I wanted to try a new hiking trail I'd read about. We compromised and decided to do both. My phone rang as I was pouring milk into my coffee. Caroline's name on the screen. I answered with a smile. How's my favorite marketing director? She asked. Senior director, I corrected with a laugh. And am good. Really good. Good enough to host Thanksgiving at your place this year? Caroline's voice was hopeful. My kitchen is being renovated and I'm desperate for someone to take over hosting duties. I paused, coffee mug halfway to my lips. Thanksgiving. The word still carried weight, still brought back memories of last year. But maybe it was time to create new memories. Sure, I said. I'd love to. Excellent. I'll bring the turkey. You handle sides? Deal. After we hung up, Jack wrapped his arms around me from behind. You okay? He asked. I know holidays are complicated. I leaned into him. I'm okay. I think it's time to start new traditions. The months between summer and November flew by. Work was demanding but rewarding. I led my team through 3 successful campaigns, and the senior VP mentioned a possible director position opening in the new year. I was being considered. Jack and I traveled to Maine for a long weekend, staying in a bed and breakfast overlooking the ocean. We hiked and ate lobster and talked about the future in careful, hopeful terms. No timelines, no pressure, just possibilities. In October, Brandon sent me a text. Sophie's birthday is next month. She asked if Aunt Barry could come. No pressure, but wanted to extend the invitation. I said yes. The party was at a park, 20 kids running around screaming, parents chatting on benches. Sophie saw me arrive and ran over, throwing her arms around my waist. Aunt Barry, you came. I wouldn't miss it, I said, hugging her back. I brought her the new book in a series she loved, and she clutched it to her chest like treasure. Mason was shy at first, hiding behind Brandon's legs, but eventually warmed up and showed me his collection of small cars. We sat in the grass and rolled them back and forth while Sophie opened presents. Diana was there, standing apart from the group. She looked different, thinner, less polished, more tired. She didn't approach me, didn't try to talk. She just waved once from across the park, a small acknowledgement. I waved back. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was acknowledgement. We'd both survived the wreckage. Thanksgiving arrived bright and cold. Caroline came early to help me prep, and we moved around my kitchen in comfortable rhythm, chopping vegetables and trading stories. Her husband arrived with the turkey already cooked, and Jack brought wine and pies from his favorite bakery. Other friends arrived throughout the afternoon. My colleague Jennifer with her wife and their new baby. My neighbor Mrs. Chen with her famous dumplings. 2 guys from Jack's debate team, recent graduates who were home visiting family but happy to escape for a few hours. Brandon came with Sophie and Mason. The kids ran straight to the pile of toys I'd set out in the living room, and Brandon handed me a bottle of wine with a grateful smile. Thank you for including us. Your family, I said, and meant it. We gathered around my table, extended with a folding section to fit everyone. It wasn't fancy china, but it was mine. The food was good, the conversation better. People laughed and told stories and asked for seconds. Sophie sat on my lap during dessert and told me about her dance class. Mason fell asleep on Jack's shoulder, exhausted from playing. As everyone was leaving, hugging goodbye and promising to do this again, Caroline pulled me aside. This was perfect, she said. You've built something beautiful here. I looked around my apartment at the evidence of the evening. Dishes in the sink, wine glasses on the counter, toys scattered on the floor. Jack was helping Brandon carry the kids to the car. Jennifer was boxing up leftovers to take home. Mrs. Chen was giving me her dumpling recipe written on a note card. Yeah, I said softly. I have. After everyone left, Jack and I cleaned up together. He washed, I dried. We worked in comfortable silence, the kind that comes when words aren't necessary. That was nice, he said finally. Your friends are great. They are, I agreed. He handed me a wine glass to dry. Have you heard from your parents? No. I set the glass in the cabinet. I don't expect to. Do you think you'll ever reconcile? I considered the question while drying a plate. Maybe. Someday. If they do the work. If they actually change. But I'm not waiting for it. I'm not putting my life on hold hoping they'll become different people. That's fair. I built something here tonight, I continued. A chosen family. People who show up because they want to, not because they need something from me. That's what I always wanted. Jack dried his hands and pulled me into a hug. You deserve that. You deserve people who see your worth. I hugged him back, feeling grateful and peaceful and more myself than I'd been in years. Later, after Jack went home and I was alone in my quiet apartment, I sat by the window with a cup of tea and thought about the past year. The pain of that Thanksgiving night, the hard months after, the therapy and the tears and the slow rebuilding. I thought about Diana's letter, still in my desk drawer. I'd read it several times over the months. Each time I understood a little more about why she'd done what she'd done. Hurt people hurt people. She'd been drowning and tried to pull me under with her. I thought about my parents, struggling now without my financial support. Part of me felt guilty, the daughter part that had been trained to take care of them, to put their needs first. But a larger part, the adult part that had learned about boundaries and self-worth, knew I'd done the right thing. You can't light yourself on fire to keep others warm. My therapist had said that in one of our sessions. You're allowed to choose yourself. I'd chosen myself. For the first time in my adult life, I'd put my needs, my peace, my dignity first. And the world hadn't ended. In fact, my world had gotten better. My phone buzzed with a text from Jack. Made it home safe. Thanks for a wonderful day. You're amazing. I smiled and typed back. Thank you for being part of it. Another text came through, this one from Sophie via Brandon's phone. Aunt Barry, I love my book, thank you. I drew you a picture. I will give it to you next time. My heart swelled. Next time. There would be a next time. With the kids, with Brandon, with this new version of family I was building, I opened my journal, something my therapist had suggested I keep. I'd been writing in it almost every day, tracking my healing, my growth, the lessons I was learning. Tonight I wrote, they say blood is thicker than water, but the full quote is different. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The bonds we choose are stronger than the ones we're born into. I thought about that for a long time. My parents, Diana, the family I'd grown up with, they were blood, but they'd made me bleed. They'd taken and taken until I had nothing left to give. The people around my table tonight, they were covenant, chosen. They showed up because they wanted to, because they valued me, because our bonds were built on respect and reciprocity. I'd spent 35 years thinking I wasn't enough, not accomplished enough, not married enough, not maternal enough. I'd measured my worth by the things I lacked instead of the things I had. But sitting in my beautiful apartment, thinking about the people who'd filled it with laughter tonight, I finally understood. I was enough. It'd always been enough. The family who couldn't see it, who needed me to be small so they could feel big, they were the ones who weren't enough. Not for me. I'd chosen myself. I'd walked away from people who diminished me and toward people who celebrated me. That night at Thanksgiving a year ago, when I'd stood up from that table and walked out the door, everything had changed. Not because my life became perfect. It didn't. There were still hard days, still moments of doubt, still grief for the family I'd wanted but never really had. But I'd changed. I'd learned my worth. I'd set boundaries. I'd chosen people who chose me back. And that made all the difference. I closed my journal and looked out the window at the city lights. Tomorrow I'd go to work and lead my team. Tomorrow night Jack and I would make dinner together and watch a movie. This weekend I'd meet Sophie and Mason at the park. Next month I'd host a holiday party for my friends. My life was full. Not in the way my family had always insisted it should be, with a husband and children and conventional markers of success, but full in the way that mattered, with people who loved me, with work that challenged me, with peace and joy and the freedom to be exactly who I was. That was the night everything changed. The night I stopped trying to buy love and started building it instead, and I'd never looked back. Now, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to walk away from family to protect yourself? Have you ever been in a situation where the people who should support you were actually holding you back? How did you find the courage to choose yourself? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you've navigated difficult family dynamics. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps me know what content matters to you. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel for more real-life stories about growth, boundaries, and choosing yourself. Don't forget to share this video with someone who might need to hear this message today. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I know it was long, but these things aren't simple. Healing isn't simple, but it's worth it. You're worth it. Remember, The people who truly love you will never make you pay for that love. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from those who do. Until next time, take care of yourselves. You deserve it.